The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, Concordant Body, Appendant Body, Masonic Authority, or CraftsmanOnline.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. Yes, still dealing with whatever it is that's in the air around here. How I love being back in upstate New York. Real quick, want to thank our friends on Patreon for their love and support. Yes, that $5 a month, that's all it takes to support the podcast. It gets you ad-free episodes and access to the full back catalog of all of our subscriber extra episodes. That's where we get some bonus time with select guests. Get started today on Patreon at Craftsman Online Podcast or click on the link in the show description of this episode. It's always cool when I get to welcome a fellow Masonic podcaster on to the Craftsman Online Podcast, which is the case this week. He is the co-host of the Minnesota Masonic Histories and Mysteries podcast. But on top of that, he literally has one of the best jobs in the world, working for the Grand Lodge of Minnesota as the regional director. And the cool part is our conversation is going to get into some of the histories and mysteries and the origins of Minnesota Freemasonry. But we're also going to be trying to answer the larger question of what do we want this Masonic Brotherhood experience to be? Join me in welcoming a first-time guest, Worshipful Brother Reed Endersbe. Welcome to the Craftsman Online Podcast, Brother Reed.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. An honor to be your guest.
We connected before the holidays in 2025, and that was the episode that I literally almost tripped on a crack in the sidewalk in front of me. As I've told our listeners, like one of the reasons why the Craftsman Online Podcast exists is because I'm a runner, and I like to have something listen to during a 30 or 40 minute run in the morning. And I stumbled upon your podcast, as I mentioned, and I was listening to one episode, and this was like the hard-hitting one where you and another brother were openly talking about addiction and your own personal stories. And I'm sitting here going, first of all, like, wow, I can't believe a Masonic podcast is getting into this. People don't associate Masons with having problems. We're the ones that are supposed to be the virtuous, solution good guys, and who would know that they have these real people problems, and just to be so real and candid about that. But it also hit me over the head because the particular conversation you were having on was evolved around alcohol and alcohol abuse and alcoholics. And that's a super sensitive topic for a lot of brothers. And I was kind of waiting for this moment to talk about this with you because I've never even mentioned it, in Lodge, but I had a close colleague that I used to work with back in my radio days who was a quote unquote demo lay boy. And when he found out that I was a Freemason, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, you should come to the meeting. I'd love for you to come see what we're all about. He's like, oh, no, I can't go to a Freemasons meeting. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong with that? None of us are perfect. And he's like, no, I know you guys, and I know you like to drink, and I can't go to your meetings. And I'm like, why are you associating alcoholism with Freemasonry? That's not healthy for either one of us. And that's a real conversation I think that we do need to have, because a lot of the events, and yeah, they draw a crowd, they draw participation, which are the cigar and the whiskey tasting nights, which are fantastic. But I don't think brothers think about those that can't really enjoy that with everybody else, even if you make accommodations.
Well, and I think that plays into and maybe this is either a Masonic thing or just the male species in general. It's the jokey banter that, oh, you're not drinking. We want to tease, we want to have the jokey banter, but are we slowing down enough to have the self-awareness to acknowledge that, hey, this brother there's a reason this guy doesn't drink anymore. There's a reason why this guy is worried about his health. He's on a diet. He may not be having the full Masonic meal that we're so accustomed to enjoy. And the alcohol thing has been, as we've talked about, it continues to grow. And many brothers are on a sobriety journey or trying to cut down. And it's health and wellness has been another push for us here too. Why don't we talk about that in Lodge? None of us are 25 anymore. It's still those glory days are well past. And when a brother, what can we do to encourage some good habits? Like we have the Goldies run at the University of Minnesota. We do every April, and it's a 5K. Don't have to run. Many of us walk. My running days are even behind us. Chiropractor said no more. Some of our guys, but it's a great time to bond as brothers, go on a 5K walk on a brisk April morning, and really start bringing some of these things into the lodge setting, that things of relevance to our members.
So my past master at my lodge here in DC last year, he borrowed something from his daughter's Bethel. She's a Job's daughter. And at the end, they called it Sunshine and Sorrows. So, of course, he had to tweak it just a little bit for Lodge because it felt a little weird for us to get up and talk about our sunshine and our sorrow. So he called it Victories and Vices. And kind of to what you're talking about with starting that pathway for brothers to actually start having those conversations that go beyond, hey, how you doing? I'm fine. Everything's good. Work is great. You know, that small talk that we can just save for the profane world because we're in this safe space, this lodge. One of the most amazing nights, because I was kind of skeptical about this, but we had a visiting group that came and did a presentation. And one of the brothers of that team stood up, and his victory was that his child that has very severe autism was actually being able to start verbally communicating with him. And him just trying to get that point out, the dude broke down and none of us were able to keep it together. Like, went over, like, hugging this guy, like, and if that's not what Freemasonry and like-minded men and safe space is about, then honestly, I don't know what is. And I don't know how easy it is for lodges to put something like that into practice, but the idea of hearing it on a podcast and saying, hey, these men are being open about challenges. They want to talk about this inside of a lodge.
I feel like as Freemasons, we think that the answer to our challenges has to be complicated. It had better be really complex or it must not be valid. And a lodge that I'm a plural member locally in St. Paul, Hector Lodge number 158. The master last year started a section of the stated meeting, called it the Beehive. He opened the floor. Share something, good, bad, or otherwise happening in your life. That has led to a lodge culture, and it's 12, 15 minutes long. Nobody's standing up and having just this dumping of problems, but now there's a trust there. One brother will stand up and say, I'm having relationship problems, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I need some help and support. Another brother may have a great news. Child just has something great at school, got accepted into college. It's across the board. Good news, it's bad news, it's struggles. And now all of a sudden, this group of brothers literally know what's going on in each other's lives. And that's leading to following days and weeks between meetings. How are you? Texts, calls, checking in. Did you get the promotion at work? How are things on the home front? And even some of the more reluctant members, maybe that didn't want to share, some older guys, well, they still had a story to tell of someone that they knew. A portion of that Beehive section, the question that came up at one of our recent stated meetings was, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self? What do you wish someone had told you when you were in that realm of, be the man you needed when you were younger? And it's not a preachy sense of some older gentleman saying, you should do it this way. It's, yeah, you know what? I learned the following lesson really the hard way. Gosh, if only someone had said, hey, here's a little roadmap. And those conversations have just become absolute gold.
Yeah, it's not the Back to the Future Part 2, here's the sports almanac, Biff giving it to his younger, not that kind of wisdom, but the wisdom of like, dude, before you do this thing, I just want you to think about something else for 2 minutes and then take the next action, because you will have taken this one moment would just change so much in the trajectory. Yeah, totally get that. Love it.
As we've had these conversations, I've received feedback from some brothers that are worried that that's going to turn into just the dumping of everything. Maybe it does require a little self-awareness and good timing, and not, hi, Michael, nice to see you, and now for the next half hour, I'm just going to dump everything into your lap that's going on in my life. Yeah, there's a delicate balance there. But speaking your truth, speaking your vulnerability is hard. And men are often maybe willing to share, but they're often not sure how they're going to react when somebody else is vulnerable to them that can share maybe some of the more serious side of what's going on in their lives. Well, a wake-up call for us was that we've been working over the last few years with the Face It Foundation. It's a peer-based group in Minnesota that addresses things like mental health, depression. They talk about suicide prevention. They're not counselors, they're not therapists. It's a peer-based group that addresses, though, the tough stuff: PTSD, addiction, all of the above. They have had an influx of Masons who went to them asking them for their help, and without naming names, but the leaders of the Face It Foundation asked these guys, "Hey, out of curiosity, why didn't you, what prevented you from sharing this with a lodge brother?" And the answer was, "I don't feel confident that I wouldn't be judged, laughed at, gossiped about. Maybe there's a little understandable insecurity built into that." And on two fronts, that, number one, that was a light bulb that our members are seeking a deeper bond of connection, trust, and brotherhood than we may be offering. And number two, it's hard to not feel like we're letting our members down. We are supposed to be the ones, the purveyors of brotherhood, are we not? That's supposed to be our specialty. And when we have a brother that we think we know well, but doesn't feel comfortable saying, "Hey, can we talk about something a little more serious? Can we put the jokey dinner banter aside for a minute? I'm struggling with X, Y, or Z." So we're going to do a pilot program with the Face It Foundation with a handful of lodges across the state in 2026. It's not going to replace our Masonic customs. It's not intended to be some innovation in Freemasonry, but it's meant to establish. Our goal is going to be establish a stronger foundation and baseline of connection to each other, to be able to open up, to be able to, again, treat that tiled lodge room as what I've thought it's always intended to be, that men's support system.
I talk about this all the time when it comes to Freemasonry and being around for, we don't know, since the beginning. There's so many different stories that go with it. But each generation has an opportunity to put their signature, their fingerprints on what Freemasonry meant to them and really define it and leave it in a better place for the next group. And what if we could do this? Like, I think this is what we were all thinking we were getting into before we showed up to our lodge, is that I'm going to go join. And I've heard it from, in New York, we call it the North Star program. Men who are interested in Freemasonry, we call them prospects, and they visit, and they all come for a couple things. They are looking for a better class of friends. They're looking to find out that big answer is, why am I here and what am I supposed to be doing with my life, right? And you join a lodge because you think you're getting in line with other people who are already pursuing that, or maybe have some of the answers that you're seeking. And kind of to what we teased about when we opened this was, what do you end up going to? Dinners, secretary's minutes, arguments over, replacing roofs and sidewalks around the lodge building, quickly gaveling, having, a quick dinner, maybe a drink at the bar, and then going home. And you're supposed to come back to that in 30 days and be excited to be there. So what if we could transform it into something bigger, to where, you actually had these places where men back in, especially if we look at it through an America 250 lens, the men who were going through this call for freedom and individualism and patriotism, and they found a safe space where they could openly talk about how all of this was affecting them and their families' lives and everybody that they knew. Like, that would be amazing if we could get lodges closer back into that step. I love that. I'm totally on board with it.
And I think that's a way to retention. But
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not, we still have to have our stated meeting. We still have to read the minutes, pay the bill. We have to do all of those things. But for how many years, how many generations have we been thinking, well, we raise a new class, Clearly the candidates, the new members, go through a wonderful, tremendous, memorable degree experience. Then we raise them, and then what do? Well, too often we release them into a sea of nothing. We hope they'll come back. Well, you know when the state it is, brother. Here's our trestle board. See you there. Well, mentoring. We want mentoring to be more than just a memorization code. We want the mentor-mentee relationship to be infinite, a lifetime. And the answer for so many years has been, well, we raised 5 guys, 2 of them come back. Well, the answer is more members, new members. Well, what would happen if we got our house in order, provided some very relevant, I call it non-Masonic education. And I get scolded by older brothers say, well, all education is Masonic. Well, I'm saying something that is not out of the cipher, that is relevant to our members. That could be a lodge education presentation over dinner that is about financial planning, about health, about caring for an aging adult.
Mm-hmm.
Any number of things. I just had this conversation in the office recently. Those items in life that no one prepares you for, that nobody tells you about. That those are just a couple of small ideas that could really give someone the incentive to, with regular programming, mixed in with regular Masonic, the things that we all love about Lodge, the history and the value teachings, the esoteric side, but then alternating that with other topics that are relevant to young people of today. I believe we are on such an opportunity when you look at, especially I say young guys, I say young to me is 25 to 42.
Agreed.
These young men are discovering that connections on social media are not authentic. That is hollow. That is the illusion of contact. They're looking for purpose. They're tired of the digital isolation of just doom scrolling and screen rot and staying at home. They don't know their neighbors. DoorDash delivers dinner. Amazon delivers. They're coming out of that shell, and they want purpose. They want personal growth. They want opportunities for authentic friendship, not just brother in name, or brotherhood's a word that we say. The number one ask of prospects that we see in Minnesota, the number one thing they want is giving back to the greater good. Does Freemasonry give me the opportunity to do something of a charitable nature, whether in my local community or beyond that? That is, I'd say, 85% of when the question, what other questions do you have? What else? What other clarifications are you seeking about us? Do you have the following that I can give? Well, when I visit a lodge, and what's your community engagement like? Oh, I don't know. We don't. That's a problem. That's an area of opportunity. Those are things that young people are seeking. And when you think about these AI apps, I'm not demonizing AI. It's not going anywhere. It does a lot of wonderful things. I was harken back to the Replica with a K. There's an app called Replica that is a virtual sibling or friend that has the latest stats. Hundreds of millions of people in the world subscribe. They pay a subscription fee to have an AI-generated friend or sibling. That is fertile ground for people that they are craving the human connection and purpose. And we have this playbook. Why? Let's put it into action.
Well, even with that app, I was just thinking, as a marketing person, like, that's a great opportunity for big brothers and big sisters to sponsor that and
Yes.
reach out to people. But yeah, to your point, the authentic human experience. I think that's what kind of draws men into Freemasonry. That's one of the things, is walking into our dusty, musty rooms and touching the old books and, seeing this small group of guys that all kind of turn around in unison and go, oh, hello, when a new person comes in, like, who are you and welcome, and oh, your interest, and just this being received. And, it's not this grand, there's no king, there's no queen that's knighting you with a sword when you become a Mason. It's just local guys from your area that you probably would never, ever, I tell this to people all the time, like, My Masonic friends are like the best friends I have. They're all the colors of the Crayola crayon box, man. These are guys that I would never meet in regular life, ever, unless I was passing them by trying to get to the restroom or grab something at a sports venue. I might bump into somebody like this, but would never have a conversation. And I want to kind of get back to your podcast because I've joked about this, and it is the Histories and Mysteries podcast. And I've always kind of joked with men that are interested in Masonry that you kind of have to have a little bit of a nerd gene in you to really appreciate what Freemasonry is all about. Like, don't have to be a kid that got straight A's in history. I'm not saying that, but they always have this interest in what came before and some of the mysteries around the corner. You do a whole podcast that's about that. Why do you think we have that as Masons?
That is a great question, and it's probably different for everyone. But I think there's a real draw for the history side of those who came before us, the shared experience, especially with young men that are seeking more information. They know that Freemasonry was a thing for an uncle, a grandfather, maybe even a relative they didn't even know, but they knew of his legacy. They knew he was a Mason, and they want a part of that, or they want to learn more about that. Historically, for some reason, the first thing when you said that came to my mind was Chris Ruley's book on Freemasons in the White House, and all this isn't political at all, but the connection that the craft has had to historical figures as well, that all have that shared experience and took hopefully some of their value teachings and applied them to their lives, the challenges, the hardships. I could pontificate for a long time about why that history thing, but it's so true. And I'm the same way, that the history of it is so fun to research, to look into, to learn of the legacies of members that came before us too, that were civic minded, not just as Freemasons, but that really did shape the civic landscape in a way of giving so selfless, so much of their time and energy given to people they may not even have ever met or come into direct contact with. What's your take on that?
Oh, for me, it's the story part of history. I always break it down to that word, is that I'm a sucker for a good story. Like, hey, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story around here. Like, let's hear it. But then when you hear these stories about these either figures, and if we wanted to stick with Freemasons, about these men, and you're like, okay, so what was it that drew, and we'll just use one of the famous of all time, George Washington, to become a Freemason, right? Or even in Brother Ruley's book, and it brought a smile to my face every time I hear somebody that I know who knows him, and I'm like, wow, and we don't know each other yet. Like there's this instant connection because we're both Masons. But when we talked about, Gerald Ford's passing and some of the special things they did here in DC for that, and the meaning of his presidency, the significance of it, and everything that was going on at that time, and examining it from like a Masonic perspective. And I'm like, would have never had these discussions in history class. I would have been taking notes on whatever the professor or the teacher was talking about with, and he was the first president who was, well, he was never elected president. And here's a fascinating fact about, but in Masonry, we can put all of these things together, and you're like, wow, I might be on a different side of the political aisle, or he might have come way before my time on Earth, but I can really respect this person as a man, a president, and of course, as a Masonic brother. Would have never had that viewpoint if I was not a Freemason.
And that was something that I know Chris found in some of his research, was so many of the stories were in newspapers. They were not in archives at lodges. They were just in archives at public libraries, about cornerstone ceremonies or some other election, whatever that looked like. There was so many, in his words, I believe, that just kept, the information stream just kept coming with new discoveries that, well, where has all of this information been? Well, it's been in the archives of the local newspapers, and learning those, like you said, when you're not sitting there like a student and having to take down, just thinking dates and the names of the doctrines and the other, when you can really look at it from more of who the person was, it's almost like a do-over of history class, which is just a blast.
Oh yeah, there's a mini series, limited series. It's on Netflix. Oh, I cannot remember who the president is, but he's the one that got shot here in D.C. at now it's Union Station, but it used to be the Potomac Rail Station, and it was after the Civil War, and he was a congressman from Ohio and
Garfield?
Garfield, yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys from HBO's Boardwalk Empire are characters in, so there's a lot of familiar faces that are in there. And it's a short run series, but as a history nerd, I just loved it. And living here in the DC area, I loved being able to go, oh, that was interesting, or I didn't know that, and I'm just kind of drawn to it. Anytime I can make a Masonic connection, oh, aces. Love that even more.
Yes.
If I was to do a second podcast, and I don't plan on ever doing it, one is enough.
Why not?
We haven't found out how to clone people without AI yet. Like, I would love that. But I would do something on history, because those are the stories that I just find I'm willing to go chase that rabbit down the hole. So I'm curious, getting to do a Histories and Mysteries podcast, was there one that was significant to you where you're like, oh man, we unlocked this, or we blew a bunch of dust off of this old historical story because we explored this via the podcast?
I think I can't name just one.
Who's your favorite child? Tell me.
What's your favorite album of all time? Can't do it. But we're constantly in search of an interesting story, something maybe that isn't as well known, and some of the more obvious Masonic topics. And in looking at a lot of social media, we'll have a profile of someone, and I like to look and immediately see research where they a Freemason, which makes it, like you said, it's that's the great payoff. And we did an episode recently about the brother from Canada who more or less invented, or was the leader in establishing time zones across the country.
I do remember this episode. Yes. With trains. Yes.
And
yes.
there you go. There's the history that I think we forget that we watch an old movie. Someone gets off the train and they would immediately set their pocket watch at the train station. Well, that was because I didn't know this, that all the rival train companies had their own time, which led to trains crashing into each other in the middle of the country because they couldn't really coordinate it. Obviously couldn't coordinate it at all well. And once the Industrial Revolution happened and the telegraph, all of a sudden technology was, maybe that was the AI of their day, but something had to be done to coordinate this in a way that would be workable, useful for not only North America, but for the world. So to see that evolution, the story of how that came to be, and then knowing that behind all of that, this brother was a Mason. It's just, I think those are the stories that really pull us in and say that was the coolest thing ever.
Here's the other caveat of that, and you can take this as the person that put all this together, is that now I am waiting for the moment, like a tiger in tall grass, for someone to say, does anyone know where Greenwich Standard Time came from? And my hand is going to just shoot up like a rocket on the 4th of July and be like, dude, let me tell you, the whole story, and he was a Mason. Can't wait. I cannot wait. I love that episode.
That's the magic behind the stories.
Craftsman Online Podcast, we are very proud to say that we are endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. We're not a part of the Grand Lodge of New York, but we are proud to be endorsed by them. However, the Minnesota Histories and Mysteries podcast is presented by Minnesota Masonic Charities. And I'd like to use the remainder of our time to kind of talk about some of the special things that your Grand Lodge and the Brothers of Minnesota are doing. So let's just start for the brother or the listener who's not familiar with your organization. What is the mission of your nonprofit, and what are some of the services that you provide?
It's a great story that really began in 1955. We had I believe he was the current Grand Master. Some historian's going to correct me on this, but circa mid-1950s, Leroy Matson was a state Supreme Court justice, I believe, and was a Grand Master, who had the vision, and his quote was that Masonry is a tool to be used, not a form to be served. He assembled his progressive Grand Lodge line officers and said, they basically sat down and said, we need to come up with something bigger, think bigger. What can we do and embark upon a project that would not only benefit or help humanity in our state, our country, maybe even beyond that? And they came up with and executed on funding the very first Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota. They raised $500,000, and there's a lot of details that go. The Order of the Eastern Star was very much a player in this too, in fundraising. Well, they came up with $1 million in 1955, opened the first cancer center. And over the years, brothers, Masons, members of the Masonic family, and outsiders have all saw the work being done and have donated time, money, and resources to that. And we ended up forming officially Minnesota Masonic Charities in 2006, bringing a lot of different parties together. Now, to date, Minnesota Masonic Charities has donated about $195 million to the University of Minnesota. We still have the Masonic Cancer Center. It's a forerunner of research, just seeking treatments and breakthroughs constantly. The Masonic Children's Hospital. We also have the Masonic Institute for the Developing Brain. That started out as an initiative to focus on children, but as that venture has grown, they're now treating adults with traumatic brain injuries, making a ton of breakthroughs on neurological advancements through research. We most recently announced a new gift to open the Masonic Institute of Biology and Metabolism. Basically, that's going to be a healthy aging pursuit. So now we have all four of those, the Cancer Center, the Masonic Children's Hospital, the Kids Health, the Masonic Institute for the Developing Brain, and soon, we love our acronyms, right? MIBAM, the Masonic Institute of Biology and Metabolism. And it is very special. It's not lost on Minnesota Masons and even Masons within this part of the country that it's very special to have these facilities under the name of Minnesota Freemasons and Minnesota Masonic Charities, that when people drive by that, they know that the Masons of Minnesota have a part of that, have really committed to truly giving back to the greater good, that the research that happens at the Cancer Center is shared and collaborated with Mayo Clinic, with all of the big names you can think of in cancer research. And their goal when we embarked on some of these recent inside projects is to find a cure and not stop until they do. And so it's just so inspiring to hear from some of the researchers and oncologists. We've had them on our podcast too, to tell us more about, make me feel like, let's just affirm that I'm the dumbest guy in the room talking to these very accomplished researchers. And so that idea from their past Grand Master, Matson, 71 years ago, little did he know that would lead to the public and to the Masonic family wanting to contribute and growing those funds and not letting that be just a one-off, and seeing how can we do this into perpetuity is, I can't tell you what an honor it is to be working for that purpose, for that cause every day. I've had many jobs in my prior career where the things I was stressing out about were inconsequential, and for me to be out raising awareness of these initiatives and working with people that want to make some sort of pledge, some sort of gift towards that, and knowing that it's going towards things like children's health, cancer research, and healthy aging is, I guess our conversations come full circle, because to me, that is the lottery ticket of a lifetime.
Yeah, it's literally his story. I mean, to say 70 years and almost $200 million and countless lives that you've saved, helped saved, families and homes and people that you've been able to keep together, communities that have benefited from it. And it's all from, these guys who all show up wearing the same dark suit and tie and are probably the friendliest people you'll ever meet in life, that sit around tables and have discussions on how they can improve their lives and do it through this significant work of helping others. Like, man, that's awesome. That would be a job that I couldn't wait to get up every day to be a part of too. So very, very cool. Their website is mnfreemasons.org. That's the Grand Lodge of Minnesota. His name is Worshipful Brother Reed Endersbe. He is also the host of the Minnesota Masonic Histories and Mysteries podcast. I really appreciate it all the time. Thank you so much for being a guest here.
Michael, it's been a pleasure. And I also want to mention mnmasoniccharities.org if you want to read some more about the Minnesota Masonic Charities. And love your podcast. It's just great to chat with you today.
Thanks again to my guest this week, Worshipful Brother Reed Endersbe, Regional Director for the Grand Lodge of Minnesota. I'm Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. I always enjoy our time together, and we have got a cool episode next Monday. I'll be welcoming Worshipful Brother Cliff Jacobs to the podcast. Now, if you're a fan of the Craftsman Online Reading Room or some of our Masonic Talks programs, you'll recognize Cliff's voice, as he is one of the most engaging and deeply esoteric brothers that I know. And that's what we're going to get into on Monday morning. Esoterica, the elephant in the room. I'll see you next month. Until then, let peace and harmony prevail.